Hey guys, it's Drew again. With the combined statistics of 250.4 WAR, 996 home runs, 3,790 RBIs, and 6,284 hits, we are going to compare and contrast two of the greatest hitters of all time. One was the kid, and one was the man. Let's check it out. So today we're going to talk about Stan Musial and Ted Williams. I want to compare and contrast their baseball careers, a little bit about their personal life, and then how we view them in the cardboard community now. So both of them started at the age of 20, and while Ted Williams was 2 years older and debuted in 1939, both of them had very similar careers. Both of them retired right around the age of 40. Both of them played the majority of their career together, at least at the same time. Both of them were franchise players. Obviously, Ted Williams played for the Red Sox his entire career, and Stan Musial played for the St. Louis Cardinals his career. Both of them were left-handed hitters. Both of them were students of the game. They focused hard, and they pushed themselves to continuously get better. Both of them were very cerebral, very, very smart. They knew pitching. They knew the pitchers. They knew situations. They knew what to do and when to do it. Both of them didn't just go for slap hits for high average and singles. They both had power. Ted Williams had over 500 home runs. Stan Musial had 475 home runs. Both of them were just the centerpiece within their own team for decades. Both of them multiple All-Star appearances, 39 All-Star appearances between the two. Stan Musial with 21 and Ted Williams with 19. Both of them multiple MVPs. Stan Musial had 3 MVPs and Ted Williams had 2, and arguably could have had a few more. In fact, he won the Triple Crown and he didn't win the MVP the year he got Triple Crown, which is just crazy. Both of them over 330 career batting average, and even when they retired and ended up going into the Hall of Fame, very, very similar. Ted Williams retired and first ballot Hall of Famer, and he ended up with 93.3% of the vote to go in to the Hall of Fame. A few years later, Stan Musial, first ballot Hall of Fame, 93.2%. So only a 0.1% difference in the way that the baseball writers at the time viewed them to go into the Hall of Fame, 93.3, 93.2. So even back then, they were looked at as these great players, and they should very deservingly be into the Hall of Fame. But they were also different. While they had some similarities within their personal lives, both of them were sons of immigrants. Ted Williams, born and raised in Southern California in San Diego, his mother was a Mexican immigrant. And while he was very embarrassed about this, he didn't really share this out there. This was definitely part of his life, but even though he hid his cultural past, where Stan Musial celebrated it, son of Polish immigrants from Western Pennsylvania, and it was just part of who he was, and he was happy to talk about that. Stan Musial was always happy. He was the guy that was happy to go out there and meet fans and just be always smiling and just that encouragement to everyone. Where Ted Williams was more focused and more determined and much more aloof. Stan Musial had a great relationship with the press. Ted Williams did not. So different people in the way they are, but definitely similar in the way they played. Both of them were veterans. Both of them left baseball within their prime of their career to go and join the military. Stan Musial lost an entire year in 1945 to go in World War II. Ted Williams left twice. He lost multiple years, both for the World War II as well as the Korean War. But historically, they were both very similar. But about their cardboard, let's talk about their cardboard a little bit. As I was looking through this, I found something very interesting. And while they played a total of 18 seasons at the exact same time, 18 seasons for the exact same time, and both of them have iconic cards that we can kind of picture and think about or whatever, they only appeared in the same set twice in their entire career. And in the 18 seasons that they both played at the same time, only 2 different sets are they both in. One is the 1949 Leaf, and I've shown mine before. I have the Stan Musial, and I'll show mine off. And this is a beautiful example, and it's got back damage, which is why I could afford it. But Stan Musial, and I will show the Ted Williams here. And as you can see, just a beautiful example of both. Both of them, like I said, left-handed hitters, and both of them was showing their follow-through. I find it interesting that the Ted Williams has a red background, and the Stan Musial has a blue background, and I'll talk about that why in a second. The other year that they were both in is towards the end of their career, which was in 1958 when Topps did their All-Star set. And as you can see, the blue background of the Stan Musial, again with the red background of the Ted Williams. And I just kind of find it funny that the two sets that they were both in both had the same color background, even though a decade apart with a different set. And I know it's just coincidence, but still kind of interesting from a cardboard perspective. But I want to show off a piece, and this is not the only reason I did this, but this is a piece that I made years ago, and I just thought it was really neat. And going around on eBay, and I like looking at old magazines, and I found a All-Star issue of Sports Illustrated. Now, the All-Star issue is actually from 1957, and I love the title of it. The title of it says it's the Battle of the Titans, and it's a split. I'll show it in a second, but it's a split picture of Stan Musial and Ted Williams. And even back then in 1957, with players like Mickey Mantle out there, or any Frank Robinson coming up as this new player, there was these huge players out there, but they picked Stan Musial and Ted Williams as the Titans, the battle of the Titans between these two. And the fact that it was an all-star game, so what I did was I took the magazine and I centered it in frame, and I took their 1958 All-Star cards, and I'll show it up here in a second. There we go. And I put it on as a highlight. And it's just a great example of the classic Sports Illustrated. I love the font of Sports Illustrated, the Battle of the All-Star game for the Titans. You know, both of them mid-swing, just showing, and even while they're both left-handed, you know, they're facing each other off. And then, of course, you've got the 58 All-Star Ted Williams over there, as well as the 58 Stan Musial. And even in their photographs, Stan Musial's got that kind of coy, you know, childish or boyish smile. Ted Williams a little more focused, and maybe I'm reading into their smiles a little much, but when you look at their baseball cards, a lot of times that's what you see. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting as I looked into these two players and I looked into their two careers, how identical they really were. They had both had so many different things going for them, but for some reason, Ted Williams is viewed as this, I don't know, maybe on a higher level, and his cards go for more money and all this other stuff. And I really kind of believe it has to do with his story. If you asked a baseball player, I'm not a player, a baseball history fan like we are, you may say, you know, what was it that Ted Williams was so amazing? And he'll tell you, well, he batted .406, the last player to hit 400 in a career. You know, 1941, the whole race between him and Joe DiMaggio, hitting 56 games, da-da-da-da-da. Well, that's a story. And it's a great story, and it's true, and all of it, the facts that they're involved in that whole thing. It was the last sort of pure entry of baseball before Pearl Harbor in December of that year, and then World War II where everything took over. Or you could talk about the fact that he was a fighter pilot, and I mean, how cool is that for a little kid that he was a fighter pilot, and he went and he joined the war and whatever. But if you ask about Stan Musial, well, tell me about what Stan Musial. You could talk about his statistics, and you talk about some of the anomalies in it, or you're talking about his consistency over so many years, but he doesn't have this story, that catch, that hook that's like, oh man, this is what makes him. But it doesn't make him any less great. It just makes him not as tellable for some reason, and I kind of find that sad because his career was so great, and also the fact that Stan Musial doesn't have all these cards through the mid-50s. You know, he's got a couple of Bowmans very early on. He's got the Red Heart, which is a beautiful card, and then nothing for a few years. And by the time Topps, sort of that 50s Topps feel, the 52 through 56, kind of goes down, and then you get into the standard size cards with more sets and more series and all this stuff of the late 50s and then on. Stan Musial's in those cards, but he's more viewed as kind of an old man and sort of whatever. At that point, you know, Ted Williams had moved away from Topps. He had his own set in Fleer, and then he finally retired in 1960. And So they've got this different viewpoint when you look at their different cards. The fact that Ted Williams just was 2 years older, so he happened to be in 1939 play ball. Well, in 1941, Stan Musial made his appearance, but he wasn't in any cards. And for, like I said, 6 seasons he had played before he appeared in a card. And when you look at Ted Williams' rookie card, it's just got this classic swing, that the splendid splinter, as he's in that black and white photograph. When you look at Stan Musial, I mean, I love it, and I have it, and it's a great card, but it's kind of a mugshot, or it looks like a high school yearbook photo, really close up. And before you really get into the beautiful cards, as far as aesthetics go. So there's this difference in the way we look at these cards, and that's okay. But it is interesting sometimes to delve in a little bit and find out who these players were and who these people were and what they did. Stan Musial is one of my favorite players and one of my favorite players to collect. And I love reading about him. I love reading about Ted Williams as well. But the more I read about Stan Musial as a person and who he was and what he did, the more fascinating he is to me. I've got a few Stan Musial items. This is up here. This is actually an LP record. You can see it up here. Stan Musial, the Hitman, and it talks about it. And I actually have a recording of the record. I took it to somebody and got it recorded digitally. And he talks about, it's just an interview about how to hit, and it's for little kids. And I can picture a kid putting this on, and just like the kid pictured, and he's got his little bat trying to emulate that Stan Musial odd stance, which you can see over here in this Heartland statue that I put up of Stan Musial with his unusual batting and with his high arm and all that stuff. And just a great player. Ted Williams, you read about him, and then you read about some of his off-field issues and things he had, family issues, and of course later on in his life, things with his son, and just all sorts of, not controversy, but just not that feel-good story, we'll say, of some of the Stan Musial stuff. So anyway, I appreciate you guys coming along this little journey and just taking the time to listen to what I had to say. So until next time, you guys be good.